let me add one more thing too.
Yeah.
Think about it in terms of like, everyone, there's going to be some suffering of income. Like there's just no doubt about that, right? We're all going to have to tighten the belt a little bit and, do a few things that are uncomfortable and so on and so forth. However, just because you're going down by some number, or maybe you're not meeting the goals that you would set for yourself when you first started, don't think of it in terms of relative to what you set. Think about relative to what the market will allow you to do. One of the things that, Scott's heard me say this, and Andrea has too, back in the day, we passed a lot of people by standing still, right? There were people that were falling by 20 and 30 and 50% in terms of volume. And we just kind of leaned into the wind and just sort of, kind of plowed our way through it for whatever reason. And so it's a relative measure, not an absolute one. So again, don't hold yourself, it's going to be easy to get, depressed or, just frustrated with the fact that, you can't get to where it was that you thought you were going to get to. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a relative thing. So as long as you continue to do the things that are correct, when this does turn back around and when, selling becomes easier because of the restrictions being lifted and so on and so forth, I think you will find that you will be outpacing your competition on a completely different level. So just make sure, again, that you're not looking at yourself kind of in a vacuum. You have to take into what the market is really allowing us all to do. So, whether that's staying in touch with people or whatever, you're really just building bridges that are going to be great for you at some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later. And the more strategic advice you can be offering folks, the better those bridges are going to be.
And I think also, Rick, to interject, being genuine is the best thing. I mean, when you call up with somebody, don't say, I call up to ask about, I've got somebody who's in the hospital right now. He's probably dead. I haven't heard from him in 2 days. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, let's be genuine. The more you can be a genuine person, the more you will have our industry in your hands, in the sense of be you first and then let the rest fall.
Yeah.
That's how I am, but that's me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a great approach, and everybody's approach is going to be a little bit different to what you do. The hardest part about this is whatever we are all feeling, and our anxiety and our, up days and down moments and everything else, we can't, just like those of you with kids, you cannot express it to your clients. You've got to be up and strong and saying, we're going to get through this, and positive, and be the cheerleader. Even if deep down inside, you're saying, oh God, I got to get through this. I got to get this done. I've got to do all these things. The most important thing is to keep our faces on and happy and professional. And, any social media should be upbeat, enlightening, express it to your spouse, express it to your best friend. Don't express it to your clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I that kind of ties back into something that Rick has said so many times, and we try to teach too, is the concept of being new and being a doer. Well, and then going into the know phase and really knowing, well, wherever you are on the spectrum of experience, there's so many resources out there, half of which we already have to pay for, RPR and HomeSnap, things like that, that you can start doing webinars, podcasts, all of those things to further educate yourself. Laura and I have a call with a CE shop about some discounts we might be able to get. If you're feeling like your mind is going crazy and you're maybe anxious to pick up the phone or text people, maybe start there, and you're going to come out of this stronger if you take the time to educate and just still treat it like a 9-to-5. I think that's important. Kelly,
hey, Amy, I'm going to add one more. I'm going to add
Sure.
something here.
Mm-hmm.
I think something else to consider too is, like Alec was saying a minute ago, our mortgage payments are due every month. Our rent payments are due every month. Our car payments are due every month. All these things, our life is based on this kind of monthly payment schedule. However, business cycles are not, and we are in what is a business cycle that is not based on a monthly, or even a seasonal kind of thing. It's an interruption that is going to be, as of yet, not fully understood, either its length or its depth. And so I think we need to also get away from this idea that the work that you're doing right now, while it might not pay off immediately, it will. So this time can be incredibly valuable for all of us in terms of organizing a CRM, make sure you're getting a powerful message out to your people, staying in touch however you wish to do so. Whatever it is you can do to help stay connected to your client base, the better. So I personally think this is some of the most valuable time I've ever seen, because it's spring market, a lot of questions, high buyer and seller anxiety, all these kind of things where it's an opportunity to shine. So don't feel like, hey, because we can't do anything, we can't do anything. You can still be doing a tremendous amount to impact your business in the long run. Take advantage of this time, because, normally there's always something. There's, Scott, how much more time do you have now that you don't have to be in every city on the planet for soccer, right? Or, my last 4 years or 5 years have been filled with volleyball chasing around. I have so much more time now to get some much bigger, better, badder strategic things done. I'm fully trying to take advantage of all of that. So again, be thinking in terms of what else can I be doing with my time that I now have that will pay off in the long run, and focus there. And I think that'll also kind of keep the boredom a little bit at bay.
Well, I think I was talking to my team the other day, and we started talking about expenses and stuff. And it came up, well, should we stop marketing, and should we pull back on our marketing in this time? And it's the exact opposite. This is the time. And if you talk to a marketing firms will say, in this time is when you should be marketing more, but we've changed our messaging. And our messaging it's a spring market, you have to buy, you have to sell. Our messaging is more towards community-based, and how can you help, and how can you help your neighbors, and how can you get involved? So I think that's what we need to really start focusing on more. And I think collectively, if we do it, and I'm not throwing this out there and telling everyone this is what they need to do, but I think collectively, if One South comes out and says, we're getting involved and we're helping, and we start to bring on that message, I think it's going to have an impact. And you shouldn't be doing it for sales. If you're ever doing community work for sales, that's the wrong thing. You ought to be doing community work because you feel it's what you need to do and it's what you really want to do. The sales will come down the road. You don't need to hard sell. They'll come to you. Andrea does it through Modern Richmond. I do it through all the stuff I do with the schools. Kelly does it through all the
RPS.
It's an organic way of selling yourself in the community. And I think that's what is so important right now.
Yeah, I think, staying genuine is what you're saying. I think that's good. So I think we were going to try to keep this at an hour. What I'd like to do, if you guys are in agreement, is I wanted to turn it to Laura for a second. She had gotten some numbers together, kind of going back to the question about where we are with realtors versus, numbers from 2008 to now. We're kind of at that high again. So I was curious to know what she's seeing. And then I know, as our managing broker, I see a question from Kelly that Laura has answered. Maybe she wants to touch on that. And then I don't know if Tom, if you've got anything you'd like to talk about from a commercial perspective that correlates with this, or. So Laura, you want to start? Does that sound okay to you, Rick, to do those things?
Sure. So I have been involved on the board, and actually every quarter we look at numbers just from an expense standpoint, input, output. And basically over the last couple years, on average, it's higher towards the beginning of the year in spring. More people get licensed and join RAR. It starts to tail off a little towards the end of the year, but it's about 45 agents a month that have joined RAR. In our last meeting in February or March, we were over 6,300. So less than 500 short of that high that Scott had mentioned. I do think, everything we do too, Laura Lafayette is very, she doesn't really mince words. I mean, she's very much one that's basically like, most of the things we do, we're doing for 10 to 20% of the agents, because there's about 80% out there that are paying dues, but they're not really bringing in the volume. So, I mean, that's always kind of been the case. And I think that always will be. One of the interesting things too, that when I think back to 2008, some of the larger brokerages, I don't know if y'all remember, but Long and Foster had bricks and mortar every couple miles. There was one at Libby and Patterson. They had Short Pump. They had Twin Hickory. So I think that's actually going to be one of the things that we're going to see. Now it's a team has bricks and mortar now. You know, look at all of the teams that have spread it up in the Fan and Churchill, some high rent areas. I think probably those people, and this is a question I would have for Tom too, about the leasing and that type of thing, what he expects to see. But I think our market is going to stay strong comparatively to the Chicagos, the New Yorks. I mean, I just read something yesterday. In New York City, there are 28,000 people that live in every mile. Can you imagine that? So that's another thing. If anything, I think, you know, you have a once every 100, 200 years pandemic, people aren't going to want to live on top of one another anymore. So I think some of the long-term things that are going to come out of this are people kind of spreading out. Who knows, the suburbs might get big again. But I do think there will inevitably be less people that join to become an agent. I think there are going to be people that have just kind of been hanging on that get out of the business. You know, we're seeing just internally, we have Coleman Jarvis, which is just a referral company. We've seen a few people in the last few months kind of move over to that. So I think we will see more of that. But, you know, last week or the week before last, we still had a listing, or somebody had a listing that they were bidding on that had 18 offers. So if all of a sudden this week, 50% of the people left the market, there'd still be 9 people that were bidding on that house. It was a $250,000 house. But I think in certain price ranges, you're going to see people that, if anything, want to carve out their own space more and not want to be in an apartment building. And, you know, people still have kids. People get divorced. People die. Again, not to be sick, but that's just how it is. So Kelly had a question about, she's got some folks, and I think everybody probably has somebody that they know that it's spring. I was going to list my house. Should I still do it? My advice is, what better time to at least try it? And I think as agents, again, being there for our people, checking on them, answering their questions. But right now, if somebody just wants to kind of list their house because they were going to do it anyway, my advice would be to try it. You know, if you're really okay with people coming into your house and not knowing where they've been. And I do think we're going to have to go through a much more stringent checklist when we're talking to particularly our sellers about realistic logistics of showings right now.